Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Sampling methods in research and research proposal writing. These two topics we will cover in lecture number 16 because both the aspects are very, very important. What should be the sample method in doing a research and how a research proposal is to be written for funding. Whether you are going for internal funding or whether you are going for an external funding, how it matters that what should be the format of research proposal writing. These things we will learn in this lecture. What is sampling? Sampling involves the strategic selection of individuals or a subset from population, aiming to derive statistical inferences and predict the characteristic of the entire population. So we say, okay, we will take a survey of 10 people who are representative of a small region, but we will take a selection of 100 people from a whole state. So depending on that area, what is the number of representative sampling that we want to do is what is very important. It offers a pragmatic and practical approach to examining the features of whole population which would otherwise be difficult to achieve because studying the total population is not only expensive, it is time consuming and often it is not possible. Market researchers are using various sampling methods to collect samples from a large population to acquire relevant insights. The best sampling strategy for research is determined by criteria such as the purpose of study, available resources, time and money, and research hypothesis. So what it means is that sampling is very crucial. What should be my sample size in my research, and in a broader spectrum also, what are the usual sampling sizes that people take into consideration? If it is a market research, then various sampling methods to collect samples from a large population to acquire relevant insight is taken care. Whereas the best sampling strategy for research is determined by the criteria: what is the purpose of study? What are the available sources, that is in terms of time, money and chemicals, and what is my research hypothesis or objective? So these are some of the key factors which determine our sampling mode. Sampling in research is a crucial method where a subset of population is selected or studied, allowing researchers to draw conclusions about the larger population while saving time, resources, and efforts. It involves choosing a sample that is representative of the population to ensure the validity of findings. So, the definition of sampling in research is that sampling is a process of selecting a sample from a larger population to conduct the research. That means you have a large objective, but you will make a subset or a small sample, and that will be the representative sample on which the study will be done. Now, what is the importance? The importance is that studying the entire population is often impractical, expensive, or sometimes even impossible, making sampling necessary for feasibility. For feasibility of any situation, you have to understand that it has to be very realistic. You can't have, say, 20,000 samples for making a survey. It is physically not possible to collect so much of data. It is simply impossible in a time frame to interview so many people at the same time, and it is expensive, it is time consuming. Therefore, sampling helps us in narrowing down the sample number and making it feasible. Feasible means possible. Possible with full accuracy. That is what it means when we talk about sampling in research. What are sampling methods or sampling techniques? Now, let us also, as we are going towards the end of these lecture series, we are looking at different aspects of research. And in current research lecture, we are looking at the sampling methods and techniques. Sampling methods or sampling techniques in research are statistical methods for selecting a sample representative of the whole population to study the population's characteristics. Sampling methods serve as invaluable tools for researchers, enabling the collection of meaningful data and facilitating analysis to identify distinct features of the people. So, it helps us. Sampling methods helps us to narrow down, and it is an invaluable tool for researchers because meaningful data can be collected and it facilitates the analysis of the distinctive feature that we are researching on. Different sampling strategies can be used based on the characteristic of the population, the study purpose, and available resources. Because research time is fixed, 3 to 5 years. And in that time frame, can we do this many samples? Because it is not just sampling, it is data interpretation, data measurement, data interpretation, coming to a conclusion, writing papers, etc., etc. So now that we understand why sampling methods are essential in research, let's also look at some of the types of sampling methods. Now, this I have sourced from Researcher Life. We have a sample space, we have sample frame, and we have sample. Before we go into the specifics of each sampling method, it is vital to understand terms like sample, sample frame, and sample space. We go from downward to upward. In probability theory, the sample space comprises all possible outcomes of a random experiment, while in the sample frame, it enlists or source guiding sample selection in statistical search. The sample represents a group or individual participating in the study, forming the basis of research finding. Selecting the correct sample is critical to ensure the validity and reliability of any research. The sample should be representative of that population. So first comes sample, we decide what sample we want to do. Then comes a sample frame, how many we want to do, what is the objective that we have to attain, and based on that, we start looking at the idea of how much should we look at the probability theory of selecting what is the possible outcome of a random experiment. So likewise, each one has its own very prominent role to play in the different types of sampling methods. Now, when we look at probability sampling and non-probability sampling, the selection of participants criteria or characteristic will show under probability sampling random selection of participants from the population using randomization method, whereas non-probability sampling will show non-random selection, as the name suggests, of participants from the population based on convenience or criteria. If we look at the representativeness, then under probability sampling, it is likely to yield a representative sample of the whole population, allowing for generalization, whereas under non-probability sampling may not yield a representative sample of the whole population, poor generalizability. If we look at precision and accuracy, it provides more precise and accurate estimates of population characteristic, whereas under non-probability sampling may be less precise, less precision and accuracy due to non-random selection. Now, when we look at the bias, then we say it minimizes selection bias when we have probability sampling, whereas if it is non-probability sampling, it may introduce selection bias if criteria are subjective and not well defined. So you understand that there are very clear-cut demarcations and characteristics of what should be the selection of participants, what is the kind of representativeness that we have selected, what is the kind of precision and accuracy that we are looking at, and are we biased or we are not biased for selecting or making the sampling method. Statistical interference. Under the probability sampling method, it is suited for statistical interference or inferences and hypothesis testing, and for making generalization to the population. Unless suited for statistical inference and hypothesis testing on the population. So non-probability ones are less significant because they are less suited. And in terms of application, if we try to look at these, we will understand that useful for quantitative research where generalizability is crucial. So probability sampling is a far better option than non-probability sampling, because commonly it is, although used, but it is used for qualitative and exploratory research. So now you know, in the previous lectures we had talked about exploratory research, quantitative research, qualitative research. Now you see, even the sampling methods are different. For application of quantitative research, we will use probability sampling, whereas for qualitative and exploratory research, we will look at non-probability sampling, wherein the in-depth insights of the goals can be achieved very effectively. Now, probability sampling, let us try to dwell into a little deeper. Each member of the population has known chance of being selected, ensuring representative sample. For example, simple random sampling. Every member has an equal chance of selection. Systematic sampling. Selecting every nth member after a random starting point. You take every 10th. So, one you have selected, then 10, then 20th, then 30th, and so on. Stratified sampling, dividing the population into subgroups and randomly selecting from each. So this is a very randomized selection. Cluster sampling, dividing the population into clusters and randomly selecting the sectors. Non-probability samplings, selection is not random, often based on convenience or specific criteria. And the examples include convenience sampling, selecting easily accessible participants. Quota sampling, selecting participants to meet predetermined quotas within subgroups. Purposive sampling, selecting participants based on specific characteristic relevant to the research question. And snowball sampling, recruiting participants through referral from existing participants. It's the entire system is very well defined. When to use what? When to use probability sampling, where to use non-probability sampling is very clearly denoted here in this particular case. Now comes sample size. Sample size is equally important. Determining the appropriate sample size is crucial for ensuring the accuracy and generalizability of the findings. Sample frame, which we learned a while ago, the list of all individuals in the population from which the sample is drawn. So that is a broad framework, and from here you will pick up A, B, C, D, E, F, or you will say A, B, F, and so on. Generalizability, the extent to which the findings from the sample can be applied to a larger population. Bias, a sample that does not accurately represent the population, leading to some kind of inaccurate finding because you have used your own biasness. I'll always take A. A may not be the choice all the time. So that can create some accurate findings, but that's where intelligent sample size is to be taken into consideration. Research proposal writing. Now let us look at a different domain altogether. This is also a part of research methodology because for a researcher, at some point in time during his research tenure, he or she will need to write research proposal. So through this lecture, I am going to guide you as to what goes into writing a research proposal. It is not like writing a research paper, first and the foremost thing. It is neither like writing a review. It is a completely different set of parameters involving experience. So a research proposal outlines a plan for research project detailing its goals, methods, and significance. It serves as a roadmap for the research and should clearly articulate the research question, methodology, and expected outcomes. A strong proposal convinces the reader of the project's value and feasibility. The proposal should discuss problem statement, objectives, research methodology, research activities, and a time schedule in about 3 to 5 pages only. You don't have to write long stories. It's a short and crisp document of just 3 to 5 pages, which should have your problem statement, objective, research methodology that you wish to apply, research activities, what is your Gantt chart, when do you want to do, which month you want to do what, how do you begin, and in the end, of course, you have to do the report writing, etc., etc. And this should not occupy more than 3 to 5 pages. A research proposal is attached here for your reference. Every construction project is unique and has its own operating environment and set of technical requirements. So, I will just brief you that in a research proposal, there are certain sections which are very much required. First, you have to ask, what is the purpose of your writing the research proposal? The purpose of research proposal is that your chance to explain the significance of your project to organizations which might wish to fund or otherwise support it. It could be for your institution. It could also be for your, other external funding. Ideally, it will demonstrate the quality and importance of your project as well as your ability to conduct the proposed research. It elaborates the idea of research plan in a very systematic manner. Writing a research plan serves several important purposes, particularly academic, scientific, and professional context. So, if you are a researcher, you will need money for doing research. And today you are a research student. In, say, couple of years' time, you will become a professor or an associate professor or an assistant professor, depending. And then you will be requiring to write funding for your own research to different agencies. So that is the training we are trying to give you at the onset of your research career. The purpose of writing a research proposal. Number one, it clarifies research goals and objectives very clearly. A research plan helps you clearly define what you aim to study, why the topic is important, and what you hope to achieve. It provides a focus and direction for your research. Second, organizes ideas and methodology. It outlines your research approach, including research question or hypothesis, methodologies to be used, and data collection and analysis strategies. This organization ensures systematic progress. So, if you organize it in that manner, you are on the right footing. Demonstrates feasibility and planning skill. How good a planner you are, how well you can time that this activity I will do in this much time, this second activity I will do in. So that is also a skill that needs to be developed right in the second year or the third year of your research. A strong research plan shows that the project is achievable within the given time frame and resources. It reflects your ability to plan ahead and manage a complex project. So it is a kind of a training. Just the way I tried to tell you how a research paper is written, how a review is written, Now I am trying to give you the salient features that should be borne in mind while writing a research proposal. Because definitely you have not done this. It is not like writing an essay, which you have done in your early education time. Research proposals are very serious and very adult activity. You may not have even heard of them when you were in school or colleges. Even under undergraduate level, you may not have even heard of this. So the fourth point is justifies the need of your research. It establishes the significance of your research by showing gaps in existing knowledge, potential contribution to the field, and relevance to current issues. So, what you have actually found out from literature survey, the gaps, now you are trying to formulate a research proposal based or a research plan based on what has not been attempted and what you wish to attempt. Secure funding or approval. In grant application or academic proposal, the research plan is critical for obtaining financial support, ethical approval if necessary, and institutional backing. Sixth point, it acts as a communication tool. It communicates your idea to supervisors, peers, or funding agencies, allowing them to understand, evaluate, and support your research. So, how well you can write your research proposal, emphasizing on why you want to do this research, how will you do this research, and what is the importance of doing this research, will make the funding agents very convinced whether it is worth funding or not. Seventh point, guides execution and evaluation. Throughout the project, the plan acts as a reference point for monitoring progress, making adjustment, evaluating outcomes. Now, many a times it so happens that you have planned a certain research, a certain experiment, and when you, based on your knowledge, but when you actually get down to doing it, in your particular case, it did not work very well, or it did not work at all. Now, in such a case, there is also a scope for changing the plan, not very drastically, but definitely you can, take a detour and make another reaction and try to do that reaction, and maybe you will get some success in that. So these flexibilities and possibilities are always there. It is not that it is hard and fast that you have only do this and this alone. Of course, as far as possible, you have to stick to that. But it is not that verbatim you have to stick to that. You can't deviate. Many a times, what you envisage on paper as a proposal may work 80%, may work 90%, may work even 60%. So now, how do you bridge that gap of 40% or 20% or 10%? You have to find an alternative to get down to a final conclusion at the end of the execution of the proposal. So those possibilities and those flexibilities are allowed. Steps involved in research proposal writing. Now let us come down to the actual. So far we were learning what is the importance. Now we will see what is the format. A while ago I was mentioning that in one of the slides, that let us see the steps of the research proposal. And here it is. First point is title and abstract. Just like research paper, here also the title has to be concise, informative, and accurately it should reflect the research topic. It should not have any, ambiguity or any vagueness or any undecisive words. An abstract or introduction that provides a brief overview of the research, including the research question, objectives, and significance. Second point, introduction provides background information on the research topic, establishing its relevance and context. It clearly states the research problem and its significance, includes a literature review summarizing key findings and identifying gaps in existing research. So this is more or less similar like research paper, because in introduction you will first start with the importance of that topic. Why at all you want to do? What is the relevance of that work in the present scenario? For example, if I say I want to do a kind of nano coating on a fabric to get some kind of antimicrobial effect. Now in today's time, microbes have created havoc. We have this viruses, different bacteria, people are allergic to so many things. Maybe a garment made out of nano coating with silver can definitely make a lot of difference, that it will not attract these microbes because it is an antimicrobial coating. Now that is very relevant in today's context. First, because it is involving nanotechnology. Secondly, it is taking care of the harmful microbes that usually come and infect on a plain cotton shirt. If the cotton shirt is coated with this nano silver, maybe the microbes will not infect, and therefore it is important and relevant in today's polluted situation. Clearly states the research problem and its significance. So introduction should be very, very solid. It should be so convincing that anybody who is reading it for funding understands it and understands the importance of that problem and its significance. And therefore, you have to start with a story. People tried this, but they got effectivity only because they were coating it on a macro scale or a micro scale. So it was getting washed off in one or two washing. But nanoscale was getting impregnated into the fiber. Therefore, it could sustain 30 washings, and therefore it was a feasible method. So those kind of, extra knowledge and extra benefit you have to highlight. Then only, and highlight not as fake highlight, but as what you envisage to attain. And therefore, it is of significance to write the introduction very effectively. Then comes the third point. Research questions and objective. Formulate specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, which means smart, research question or objective. Here, we will follow the way we write, any research paper. It has to be very well written. The research plan, every research plan has its own objectives. It explains what the research aimed to achieve and what question it seeks to answer. Fourth point, the methodology has to be written down very clearly. Describes the research approach, including the theoretical framework, research design, and data collection methods. Explains how the data will be analyzed and interpreted. So in methodology section, all the methods have to be very clearly written down. You can't afford to, have any shortcut. It should be convincing enough that this is how the methods you will be following, and there has to be a concrete research design and how the data will be collected, what are the instruments that you will be using, and so on and so forth. Justify the chosen methodology and its suitability for addressing the research question. Why you will be using UV, why you will be using FTIR, is there a need for spectroscopic analysis, and so on. You will make a small justification. Fifth comes the timeline and resources. Outlines a realistic timeline for completing the research project, including different stages and milestones. That means in the first 3 months, which is the first milestone, I will do this. In the second milestone, I will do this. In the third milestone, and so on and so forth. Identifies the resources required, such as in the research, such as funding, equipment, and personnel. Personnel means research staff. Sixth is ethical consideration. Addresses any potential ethical issues related to the research, such as informed consent, data privacy, and confidentiality. Whether I am going to use any animal house, have I taken ethical permission from the institute, etc., etc. This outlines how these ethical considerations will be actually addressed and have been taken care of. Seventh point comes expected outcome and significance. Discusses the potential contributions of the research to the field of study. Explains the practical implications and significance of the research findings. So, you have to also say that this is my expected outcome. It may or may not happen in reality, but at least that focus is very important. And what is the significance if you get that expected outcome? What is it that you are envisaging that it is going to make a difference? Eighth point, budget. If applicable, if you are applying for any funding, budget is applicable. But if you are making a research proposal for your department, then your funding will be taken care by the departmental budget and you don't need any extra money. But mostly budget is applicable. Provides a detailed breakdown of the research cost, including the research staff or the personnel, materials, travel expenses to attend conferences, or sometimes you have to go and collect samples. If you are an environmental researcher, then many a times you have to collect soil samples or water samples or such samples from a particular site, because your research site is, say, X place. You want to see the situation of water of Ganges in Varanasi. You can't collect Yamuna water and do the analysis. You will have to go to Varanasi, travel there, bring those samples and canisters and then analyze them. And then comes the last part, references, including a comprehensive list of cited sources which you have mentioned in the introduction part. So all those things have to be taken care of. Now, key considerations to writing a good research proposal. It should be clear and concise. So clarity and conciseness are of prime importance. The proposal should be clear, concise, and easy to understand. Feasibility. Demonstrate that research is feasible within the given resource and time frame. Often, what I do, I try to do small experiment after I have formulated the research proposal in order to convince myself that it is doable. I'm not writing anything which will not work. So I have some idea. I may not do all the experiments, but I will do a few of the experiments just to convince that my objectives are clear, my hypotheses are clear, and I am on the right footing. Originality. Highlight the unique aspects of research and its potential contribution to the field. That means you are doing a novel work. This has to be highlighted. What is the novelty? What is it that you want to attain? If you have missed out on that, your proposal is, not a well-written proposal. You have to be convinced in what you are doing is extremely important and necessary and has not been attempted. That's why it is novel. If you are convinced, then only you can convince others. So that is what it means by originality. Significance. Justify the importance of the research and its potential impact on the field. Unless and until you highlight, why should anybody give you money? Just because you have asked money to do research, what is the outcome? What is the significance of this research? You have to justify. Unless and until it is an impactful writing of proposal, nobody is going to give you funding. They will not be convinced that it is a relevant research in today's time. Writing style. Adhere to specific formatting and citation guidelines of the institution or funding agencies. Even funding agencies have their own format for writing proposal. That makes life even more easy. But you have to strictly adhere their specific formatting. Review and revision. Seek feedback from supervisors or mentors or colleagues and revise the proposal accordingly. You can show it to your HOD, head of the department, and seek his or her opinion. I have written a proposal. Sir, can you just go through it? Check if I have done it in the right manner, because when you are writing for the first time, it is possible that you may have missed out something unknowingly, or there is something which is lacking your significance and your novelty. Then they will tell you, no, you have not highlighted the novelty part. See, unless you highlight the novelty part or the significance of your research, this is not going to get funded. So that is what is a good writing, and that requires revision and review before you actually submit. So the 5 steps for writing a successful research proposal are: step number 1, identify a research question. Step number 2, review the literature. Step number 3, develop the methodology. Step number 4, create a timeline and budget. And step number 5, write and revise your proposal. It's so easy then done. It is just 5 steps. You are 5 steps away from writing a successful research proposal. But actually, it is not as easy as what it appears to be. But after writing 3-4 projects, it will become like, with a click of your hand, you can just write a proposal within half a day. The first proposal may take several days. You're just writing 3 pages, but it has to be so impactful that the reviewer of the funding agency cannot stop himself from funding it. So that is the kind of spirit that has to be developed. Formulating a good research paper title. Now let us go back to research paper, because that is one of the primary thing that a researcher has to do. The title, whether it is a research proposal or a research paper, has to be very well written and impactful. The title should be ideally written after you have written your paper and abstract. You can have several options in your mind, but finalize it when you have fully written the paper. Include all the essential terms in your paper. Keep it short, to the point, maybe less than 16 words or so. Avoid unnecessary jargons and abbreviations. Use keywords that capture the content of your paper. Now you will understand that whether it is writing a good research paper or a good research proposal, title has to be very impactful. You can't afford to make any compromises with that. Tips for effective proposal writing. Because there was a commonality between title of a research proposal and a research paper, I took the previous slide. Tips are that be clear and concise. Avoid jargons. Explain technical terms. Know your audience. Tailor the tone and content accordingly. Use persuasive language such as emphasize the benefits and feasibility. Proofread. Spelling and grammar errors weaken your credibility. Individual or include visuals. Diagrams, tables, and charts improve readability. And if you have some preliminary results, do put those preliminary results to substantiate that your idea is a solid idea, that it will work. Now, if you are writing a funding agency, then your audience is the ones who are related with this kind of research funding. Use that kind of language and not anything. Very precise, clear, shortcut, very but meaningful should be conveyed from the title. So the template is something like this. If you are writing a research proposal, there is number one, a title page where you have project title, author's name, organization, his affiliation or her affiliation, and date. Then number two is the executive summary, which is a brief overview of the proposal and its significance. Third number, introduction and background, context or problem being addressed, importance and relevance. So you are building up why you have written this proposal in that introduction and background portion. Objectives and goal. What the proposal aims to achieve using SMART goals. That is, how you will be able to do this research by using measurable, achievable, and or time bound and all of that. And this way you will be able to write it in the most efficient manner. Fifth point, methodology and approaches that you will be adapting. Description of methods, tools, and strategies. Sixth is timeline, because everything is time bound, whether it is your research tenure or a research proposal that you plan. It has to be done in a time frame. So the project phases and their expected durations are mentioned in the timeline. Then comes budget. Itemized cost and justification. How much money you require for your project staff, how much for consumables, how much for instruments, etc. If you are going to get external testing done, keep a budget for that external testing also. External testing means sending samples to other institute for testing. Nobody will do it free of cost. Everywhere they take charges. So you have to keep a budget, and you have to strictly, strict to the follow the budget outlines. You can't use the staff money for consumables and the consumables money for traveling, etc., etc. Everything has to be categorized, and for every budget head you can ask money, which is very, very nominal. Okay. Then coming to expected outcomes. Anticipated results or benefits also have to be written down. And here you can mention, because your preliminary experiments went in a fruitful manner, you are expecting that the entire project also will work in the positive direction. Evaluation and monitoring. How successful will be measured and tracked. Now, once your approval is done of the proposal, then there could be a yearly monitoring just to track, because they give money year wise. So how much money was given in the first year? Were you able to utilize it? Has your work proceeded according to the timeline plan? What all have you achieved according to the timeline plan? In 1 year, you were supposed to do, say, 1 to 5 items. Have you been able to do 1 to 5 items? All those things will be monitored after the completion of 1 year. And then only the second year's funding will be released. Then 10th point is conclusion. Summary and reaffirmation of the proposal's value. And 11th is references or bibliography. All the cited sources and materials have to be mentioned in the reference section. And then comes 12th, appendices, if any. If you have any supporting documents, chart or questionnaire, if you are doing a kind of a survey, then what kind of questionnaire you have developed, and all of that can be added in the appendices. So, you see, this is how the proposal is actually written down. So, the title page, the structure of research proposal has title page, title of the research project, name of the researcher, affiliation, contact details, and date of submission. Abstract has executive summary, a brief of maybe 150 to 250 words, summary of the research problem, objective, methodology, and its significance. Third is introduction or background. Define the research problem or question, provide background context and rationale, highlight the significance and originality of your work. Then comes fourth, literature review. Review key existing studies relevant to your topic, identify the gaps in the current knowledge, show how your research will fill those gaps which you have identified. Then comes fifth, research objectives and hypothesis. Clearly state that research goals, if applicable, present hypothesis or specific research questions. Use SMART criteria, that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. And all this, if you adhere very strictly, then you have at least won the battle halfway. Sixth comes, what is your research methodology, your research design, your research sample, that means population and sample, data collection methods, whether you are using in research design qualitative or quantitative or mixed methods. If you are using population and sample, who will be your study and how will they be selected? Data collection methods, whether you are doing surveys, interviews, experiments, instrument, tools that you will use, that is questionnaires or software, data analysis, How will the data be interpreted? Statistical methods will be mentioned. Ethical consideration, have you taken the required consent, anonymity, ethical approval, confidentiality, etc. Then seventh comes the timeline. Detailed schedule of research activity can be shown through Gantt chart. Budget, which is always mostly applicable, but I have written if applicable in case you are submitting your first proposal to the HOD, there the departmental fund will take care. Estimate cost of equipment, travel, personnel, materials, and so on, and put a justification for each one of them. Because many a times, Department of Science and Technology will ask you, what is the justification of employing 2 research staff? Then you have to write that the work is so much that 2 people need to work on this particular project to complete the project in 3 years' time. Ninth is the expected outcome. Anticipated findings or contributions, academic, social, or practical implications. So, at least if you have done preliminary work, you will be confident that your outcomes which you are expecting have some positivity. Then 10th is the reference style or referencing. List all your sources cited in the proposal using a consistent citation style. You can use APM style or MLA style, Chicago style. And in one of the lectures, I had told you how APA is different from MLA, how MLA is different from Chicago style. Very minor differences. But reference in your introduction part is a must, whether it is your research paper or your research proposal. This you have to at least keep in mind very, very clearly. Then comes appendices, if you have any, like survey instruments, interview guides, or any other supplementary material. If you have prepared a questionnaire, you may like to attach that. Now, I just wanted to show you this slide, which I have sourced from Dissertation Writing, a guide to write the master's research proposal. Because if you have understood this, you can write any other research proposal also. Here also, it enlists the same points which I have mentioned, but in a little, stylish manner. It is showing more colorful. So I thought of selecting this slide. First is title. First and foremost, you have to have a title. Then is your introduction. Then is your research question and background of the study. Then comes literature review. On this research question could also act as an executive summary which we were mentioning. Then comes, after literature review, methodology, all the methods that you plan to use. Sixth is timetable, that is the timeline. When and how much time will you be spending in every phase of your research? Then comes bibliography or referencing. And eighth point is proofread your research proposal, because it is very important that you do not make any mistake while doing this process, because this will be submitted to another agency and therefore they should not find any mistake. These are the steps to follow meticulously and carefully. Now, this is very important from the point of view that having learned so much about research in the methodology part, what actually holds on the research? There are 3 pillars of research, and this particular slide I have sourced from ACS publication. One is measurements, second one is an analysis, and third pillar of research is dissemination. It rightly impacts or gives the crux of what research is all about. If you have not done measurements correctly, all your data analysis will go haywire and you will not be able to disseminate any concrete knowledge. So this is what it means, that research is sitting on these three major pillars: accuracy in measurement, proper data collection and interpretation, and final dissemination of your information to the scientific knowledge is very, very important and necessary and is mandatory. So to conclude this lecture, I would say, in conclusion, writing a research proposal is a fundamental step in the research process as it outlines the framework for a planned investigation. A well-crafted proposal demonstrates a clear understanding of the research problem, represents a strong rationale for the study, and defines achievable objectives using appropriate methodologies. It also shows the feasibility, originality, and potential impact of the research. Ultimately, a research proposal serves as both a roadmap for the researcher and a persuasive document for gaining approval for funding, making it a critical component in the success of any research endeavor. So you understand that it is a very important point to remember how to write a research proposal in the life of a researcher's journey. With this, we have come to an end of this lecture. Thank you.